Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli back out in the shop with another video for you today. And in today's shop, we're gonna be talking about my top 4 baits for the month of March. Top 4 baits for the month of March. You know how this video goes. We're gonna give you 2 for the top half of the country, let's say Virginia North, and we're gonna give you 2 for the bottom half of the country, let's say Virginia South. But let's talk about March before we get into these baits. Pretty much March in most places in the US is some phase of the spawn. Specifically, it's pre-spawn in a lot of places in the month of March. And you know, you remember from February's video, we talked about fish that are migrating toward the spawning areas from winter pattern. Well, March is a pickup of that, right? March is a time where these fish are transitioning, but they're really getting close to where they're gonna spawn. So a lot of places, let's call it, you know, the Carolinas, Tennessee North, March is pre-spawn. These are fish that are getting ready to bed, they're getting close to, or they're in the areas they're gonna spawn. So pre-spawn, big theme in the month of March. When you get really far south in the month of March, they're in all phases of the spawn. Places like Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, even South Texas. The month of March, you're gonna see fish that are spawning. You're gonna see fish that are done spawning. That's right. The month of March in Florida, there's post-spawn fish already. And you're still going to see some coming to the bed in the month of March. So in general, pre-spawn period with some spawning fish way down south. So it's an exciting month. It's a month where a lot of fish are making that push to the shallower zone. Okay, let's start with my top 2 baits for North Country in the month of March. And I'm going to start sounding like a broken record when I talk about this first one. And it is a tight wobble crankbait. A tight wobble crankbait. Especially if you're listening to this and you're in a part of the country where fish are still migrating toward where they're going to spawn. You cannot beat a crankbait because it covers water and it triggers a reaction strike, right? Pre-spawn fish, you know, the water's in the 50s, right? Low 50s all the way to the high 50s. And even though they're on the cusps of spawning, they're still kind of moving and they're still kind of transient. And because of that, I like to cover a lot of water, but I don't want a crankbait that's big, wide wobble, right? I don't want a crankbait that displaces a ton of water. I want a crankbait that's tight. Tight wobble, inline wobble. The Fritz side is one of the best. It's got actually 3 sizes to it. It has a 5 junior, it has a 5, and a 5 biggin. And these are my 2 favorite sizes, the 5 and the 5 biggin. And these are great crankbaits to target that, let's call it 2-3 feet, all the way to like 6 feet zone. And that's a pre-spawn zone, right? It's not early pre-spawn. These fish aren't like deep out toward the wintering area. They're moving shallower. And that, you know, that 3 to 5, 3 to 6 foot zone is perfect in the pre-spawn. So, flat side crankbait, love the Fritz side. I keep the colors pretty simple. I like some reds for crawfish imitators. I like some shad colors. And I also like some chartreuses to imitate, you know, bluegill or perch or things like that. So number 1, March bait in the pre-spawn, especially up north, tight wobble crankbait. All right, let's go to number 2. And number 2 is great because this style of lure is, you're going to hear more about it. In fact, if you go back in my video vault, research the title Magic Minnow, and you're going to see an entire video about this bait. But my number 2 bait in the pre-spawn, especially in the north, is a Jig Head Minnow. A minnow rigged on a jig head. It's such an easy presentation, right? You look at it and it's a 3 to 5 inch minnow bait. I like the 4-inch versions on a ball head jig, any of your favorite jig head. As long as it has a 90-degree line tie, it's good. And this is the kind of bait that you can target fish that you see with your electronics. Like it or not, guys, forward-facing sonar is changing the world. And this is a bait that you can put on their noses and keep it there. Okay, so a Jig Head Minnow. Here's two of my favorites. I'm really, really in love with the Maxent flat nose minnow. It's 4 inches. It's, of course, got the scent built into it. And the tail on it is like that, which I like. The other one of my favorites is the Berkley Power Bait Power Minnow. Also 4 inches. It comes in some other colors that the Maxent doesn't come in. And sometimes that's a benefit. But both of these minnows rigged on a jig head. And literally, when I'm going down those pre-spawn transition areas, right? I'm looking at secondary points. I'm looking at channel swings. Head it into the pockets. Head it into the creeks where they're eventually going to spawn. Head it on the flats. I'm looking for those places that stick out, right? A point, a bump out, a little corner of a channel bend. And I'm dropping my forward-facing sonar. I'm looking. When I see them, I cast it past them. I bring the bait to them. And I always try to make this bait work up over their heads and draw the fish to the bait. Real important to keep it above them. The thing with that minnow, it just looks like a bait fish. It looks like a bait fish that's distressed. And it's such an easy meal that it's just hard to not fish that thing when you're looking at the fish. So number 2 bait in March up north, minnow on a jig head. All right, let's keep going. Now we're going to get down south. And, you know, March in a lot of southern states is still pre-spawn. Talk about the Carolinas, Tennessee, parts of Alabama. Still a lot of fish that are waiting to spawn. A lot of times what these fish do in March on those just on the cusp of spawning is they stage on cover, okay? March fish are synonymous with hanging out on cover before they go to the beds. Lake like Gunnersville, I've seen them do it on docks. Lake like Smith Mountain Lake in Virginia, I've seen them do it on fallen pine trees. You know, a lake that has a ton of vegetation, I've seen them do it on outside and inside edges of grass, right? They hang in the cover, they wait. When things are right, water temperature hits that 62, 63 degrees, they go and spawn. But before that, they're waiting and they're eating. And one of my favorite baits to target those fish is a jig, okay? Is a jig. Skirted jig, good old-fashioned skirted jig. I'm a big fan of both the mini flip jig, which is a smaller compact jig, and also the missile flip out jig, which is more of a full-size standard jig. And honestly, if what they're eating is smaller, I go with the mini flip. If it's cold conditions, we had a cold front, the water's clean, I go with the mini flip. If it's a pre-spawn March bite and the water's stained, the water's dirty, it's prefrontal, it's cloudy, it's raining, it's overcast, I go with the flip out. I want something bigger, right? If the fish are biting, I want a bigger presentation. So in either case, skirted jig, fishing it around the cover. When that water is more toward that 60-degree mark, if you're in the high 50s to low 60s, I really like a crawl trailer on the back of that jig. Chigger crawl is great because it has a little bit of action. If you're in March and you're fishing that jig and the water's in the mid to low 50s, I still prefer a chunk style trailer. A max scent chunk, a power bait chunk, gives it a little more fluidity to the bait. So dialing in the trailer to water temperature, but skirted jig around cover, right outside of where they're gonna spawn. You can't go wrong with that bait in the month of March. All right, last but not least, we are gonna talk about my spawn bait for these fish, for fish that are spawning, and I'm looking around and I can't find the bait. Oh, here it goes. My March pre-spawn spawn bait is this thing right here. And just like that magic minnow, please go to my video vault, my archived videos, and search out the video on the Ghillie. Because, guys, this is a real killer when fish get on the beds. If I'd be honest, I'm not like an expert at it. But I know one thing. When bass are engaged in the act of spawning, whether they're guarding the bed, whether they're chasing away predators, whether it's the male or the female, bass in the month of March that are spawning absolutely freaking hate bluegill. They can't stand a bluegill. And because of that, it's an amazing bait in the month of March when fish are spawning, right? When they're in one of those cycles of spawning. Even fry garters, right? Even if you're in Florida or South Texas and March means some fry garters around, fish that are actually done already, just as good because those bass hate bluegill during the month of March. You know, my two favorite sizes, this thing comes in 3 sizes, is the 90 and then the 110, okay? The 90 and the 110. And the 110, if you look at the 110, that looks like a young bluegill, right? Not a full adult bluegill, but a young bluegill. And that really is the bait that I throw rig Texas style. I'll put a bullet weight to the nose of the bait. I'll side rig it with a 3 or a 4/0 offset hook, and I'm targeting the areas where those fish are bedding. If I can see the bed, once I get it in there, guys, literally, I just shake it. I just make that thing look like a bluegill that's pecking around, trying to get the eggs. So Texas rig around the beds. If I see fish guarding fry, same Texas rig, I'll just swim it. And now it's coming through the fry balls, acting like it's trying to eat the fry balls. The bass will annihilate it. So I love the 110 size Texas rigged, but guys, do not sleep on this one right here, which is the smaller size Ghillie. This is the 90, and I'm going to rig the 90 on a short leader drop shot. And when I rig that smaller bluegill shape on a short leader drop shot, the weight will get in the bed, but the bluegill will just kind of hover above it in place. Same thing, I'll shake my rod. It kind of looks like the bluegill's hovering, getting ready to go down to eat an egg, and it's a killer. Without a doubt, it's made me a better fisherman when fish are in some phase of the spawn. When them fish are around the beds, this has made me a better sight fisherman, a better spawn fisherman. So, month of March, fish are around the beds, just on, just off, spawning. They hate bluegill, and a Ghillie is a good bet. Number 4 right there for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. Just like February, March is a month of transition. Pre-spawn, moving to the beds, or spawning. You got to keep up with the fish. Try those baits, gave you 4. They'll help you keep up with that phase of the spawn and hopefully catch more bass. Man, I hope you're enjoying these shop videos. If you are, stop right now, hit the subscribe button, subscribe to the channel. If you do that, we're going to send you a notification with a new video dropping every single week. If you're already subscribed, man, tell your friends, tell your buddies about Mike Iaconelli Fishing on YouTube. We're here to help you hopefully catch a few more fish. Top 4 baits for the month of March. See you later.